Previews.
5 months?
Previews.
You make a lot of cake on that?
No.
Not money, actual, did they bake you a cake?
I might as well make a cake. You don't make any money on Broadway.
That's cool. Really?
You don't make money unless you sell out every night.
And you
we made money each week. We were in the black every week, but not that much. But unless, you have to pay back the investors. So you don't make money on Broadway. It's really terrible.
How, at what point, because you're a guy,
awful.
A lot of your one-man show, History of the World?
Yeah.
What is it, Long Story Short?
Long story short.
A lot of it, I'd seen pieces of it in your actual act.
Yes.
Now,
Yes.
At what point do you cobble that together and start saying, I think I have a one-man show and I think I could put it up on a theater in Broadway?
At the point where, I just felt like doing something at a theater. I'd done theater shows before. And so I just felt like doing another one because I was like, I'm going to the clubs. It's kind of, you know how it is. The clubs are amazing in a certain, like, every time you go back to a club, you're like, I love the clubs. And 3 days later, you're like, I hate the clubs.
I love the clubs. I just hate having, when I get off stage, a half hour later going back out. It's like, no, I just did it.
Well, I was doing 3 shows a day when I was on Broadway. So on Saturday, I had to do 3 shows in a row. So that was torture. But I don't mind the clubs. I'm just saying that some nights when you're out there and you just feel like they're not going to control this crowd. They're just trying to push drinks on them.
But at Broadway, they're controlled.
Broadway, they're controlled. There's no drunks. I mean, very rarely do you hear somebody say anything in the audience.
You just hear that candy wrapper. That's the only thing.
Yeah. And now they have drinks. They serve drinks. So you hear glass and ice tinkling.
How scared were you? What?
They chew it. How scared was I when?
Opening night of that show. Was it? Let me ask you in a different way.
Yeah.
On opening night, I want to put a pin in how scared were you, but were you standing on the edge of a cliff? Like, was it that big of a thing to you, or was it like when you just play a different arena, like I'm just gonna go out and do a show? Like, what's the big deal?
We know how it is. Once you get your first laugh, if the laughs are in the right place, you can be on Broadway or you could be in a worse club. Doesn't matter.
But like a week out,
but if you
start shitting your pants, right? Excuse me.
Oh, I see audio effects for this podcast.
No, I got Fred.
How is that still funny? From the age of 6 on. But it's, no, I mean, I wasn't scared. I wasn't scared because it's the same always. You know how it is. When you're live performing, it's a whole different ballgame. I don't give a shit about Broadway. I don't care about fucking Broadway. Jay, I don't know how many ways I can convince you. I don't give a shit.
I don't believe that.
I wasn't like...
You're a guy that toiled and toiled and toiled had negative connotations.
I toiled and toiled and toiled.
And toil and trouble. Did toil have negative connotations? Because that's not how I mean it.
No, I think it's
You're a guy
that
worked and worked and worked and worked. And you were always the guy, like you said on Opie and Anthony, like you turned down Austin Powers and they broke your balls mercilessly.
I showed him.
You showed him. Who needs to be in that 5 times and get paid in perpetuity?
Literally sitting there going, Mike, stop it, Mike. I get it. Good luck. Like thinking that my movie was going to get made. That was writing.
And when Austin Powers came out,
I didn't even notice it from the beginning.
People don't know this probably, listening to the podcast. Colin Quinn turned down the Seth Green part in
Austin Powers. Mike Myers called me up and told me, I'm going to give you this part in Austin Powers. You know, can you come out and shoot in a few weeks? And I was like,
not audition.
No audition.
Not meet a producer.
No, he saw me on Larry Sanders playing the son, and he's like, I just want you to do that. I was like, Mike, we only have one problem here. I'm not interested. He's like, well, you don't understand. There's not an audition. I'm just flying out. You're going to do the part. It's about 3 weeks from now. Mike, you don't understand. I'm working on my own movie right now, too.
What was that movie?
A movie that never got made called St. Anthony's Bones.
St. Anthony's Bones?
Yeah.
Don't you think now, because of Broadway, you can get it made on HBO?
No. Because of Austin Powers, I can get it made. If it's better than Austin Powers, I would turn down Austin Powers for it. It must be great.
I think because of the Mohr Stories podcast.
I hope so. Maybe with the amount of listeners you have, I'm assuming some of them are in show business. Maybe they'd like to float a few million and do St. Anthony's Bones.
I'll give you a couple $.
Will you?
Want to make $1?
Yeah.
St. Anthony's Bones? What's the, what are the bones of this movie? What is it?
Well, it's set around a street fair, but it's also, it becomes like a hut. What?
Like the San Gennaro feast, St. Anthony's feast?
Yeah, only in Brooklyn. And it's sort of a comedy set around a heist, a church heist.
And it's St. Anthony's Bones.
I'll probably have to dust it off a little. That was many years ago, as you know.
So, when you were working on your manifesto in your apartment.
Yes.
was how much of that made it onto the long story short?
None of it, really.
Really?
Yes.
So you're like John Nash, Beautiful Mind, this crazy person with all these pages in his apartment?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you ever say, like, what am I doing?
No, because, we are writers. I mean, I'm sure you write too all the time. I said, we're writers. No.
You know what I write? When somebody gives me an advance and says, now write, I start writing.
Yeah.
I never write hoping down the line someone's going to pay me for that. Because my biggest fear is working my balls off on writing and people going like, yeah, thanks, but no thanks. And I'm like, why did I do all that?
I've lived your biggest fear then. I've lived your biggest fear. And let me tell you something. It's something to fear. It's a very horrible feeling. When you write these things and then you're like, wait a minute, but you can't turn them down and then do 30 horrible. Like when you see the amount of brutal movies that are out, you're like, no, you can't turn this down because, the things you're doing have less consequence. They're not as funny. And they don't even, you know what I mean? They may have a little bit.
I pitched a show to UPN.
Yeah.
And I've said this on the podcast before. It was a white three brothers. One's white, one's black, one's mulatto. And the little one, mulatto, like say Mario Lopez looking, goes away to NYU.
Right.
And the white brother and black brother move in around the corner, unbeknownst to him, to always keep an eye on him.
Right.
They always fight, the white and the black, but never because of race, obviously, because they're brothers.
Right.
They fight because they're brothers.
Right.
It's called Brothers Keeper. This kid Walter Gauze wrote it. It was perfect. It's got everything. And
it's an allegory.
Yes, UPN turned it down, and we were just like, we were stunned.
Right.
And we walked out, and there's a poster for Homeboys in Outer Space on the wall, exactly across.
Oh.
Like, it's really selling show. I've never tried to sell a movie. And writing a movie to me,
I've done shows and movies, try to sell them, yeah.
Shows to me are a lot easier because you can manipulate it on the fly when they go, what about this? You go, exactly. You're not even close, Sam. No, coach, that's it. You hit the nail right on the head, Sam. But a movie, like, you work and work and you got like 116 pages and they go, do they have to be Italian? And a piece of you dies.
But that's what I love about that movie, The Big Picture. You ever see that one with Kevin Bacon?
Yeah.
So funny.
I don't know you. I don't know what you do. But you're very talented. And I'm never wrong about these things.
I mean, and then what's his name? The guy that died, Jack Nicholson's buddy, that plays, he plays the head of the studio. And he goes, wait a minute.
Harry Dean Hopper?
No, the guy,
Harry Dean Stanton?
No, he died like 15
Think
years
of other
ago.
friends.
No, he's still alive. Yeah, the other friend.
Sort of.
But anyway, he's like 15 years ago. He was in Sling Blade. He was the pervert that was with.
Say his name, dummy.
I can't remember.
All right.
So he goes, wait a minute, to the director. Kevin Bacon goes, wait a minute, he's pitching a movie. How old are these people? And he goes, early 40s. And he goes, oh, like he just like somebody stabbed him with a knife. It's one of the funniest things I ever saw.
How many times?
He goes, how about if they're in their 20s? He goes, yeah, I can see them in their 20s. The next thing you know, it's like a beach movie. They're throwing big balls around. The girls wearing bikinis.
Hey, hon. Nick knew a guy that wrote a movie and then he sold it and then he visited the set a month later. And as he was walking into the stage, people were walking out and they were going, all right, because we got to get ready for the dance number. Who was that?
I didn't hear
A friend of yours wrote, you got to get closer to the mic. A friend of yours wrote a movie.
House Arrest.
House Arrest was written by
A gentleman who was in Waiting for Guffman and...
Come closer.
He was in,
Come
That's
closer.
probably why they wrote the other one then.
he was in all... He's
But it was
he's
this
a
dark
fabulous-
comedy,
it was
right?
a dark comedy about a bunch of kids that kidnap their parents and they keep them in the basement and they
Yeah.
torture them. And the
The
writer
kids
went to the
kidnap
set
the
one.
parents, they torture
The
them.
kid goes to my friend went to the set one day and said, how's it going? This little toothless girl comes up and goes, great, today we did our dance number. And my friend went, all right, my movie's officially a piece of shit. And he just walked right out.
But if he's Waiting for Guffman, then he probably wrote that movie based on what happened in that movie, when it was like the Oscars and they keep changing it to like Thanksgiving.
Oh my gosh.
Waiting for Punum or Purim.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they all think they're all going to get nominated?
Yes.
That was a good, they're all good.
That was a great one.
That's what I always wanted to do. I've been asking every guest, and they ask me back, what do you want to do? And I'm like, well, I always wanted to play Chet Baker. I always wanted to play like a wrestling coach, like Gable or something. Yeah.
Dan Gable, I love too. I love it. Dan Gable and
I
Chet
love
Baker.
you.
Those are two great goals.
But
Dan Gable.
then I
Dan
realized-
Gable.
Yeah.
You know his whole story, right?
Yeah, we'll get it in a second. But Cael Sanderson's better. He never lost.
But
Cael Sanderson never lost.
you said we'll get into it in a second, then you went through 3
But when I watched like that kid Sean William Scott,
right.
every role he does, and he's funny.
Right.
Like, I'm not saying
good.
there's nothing against this kid.
He's good.
But every time I see him in the back seat in Cop Out, I go, fuck, I could kill that.
Right.
I've never just been called upon to be like a funny person in like a Guffman movie. And I'm like, I always feel like I would really annihilate something like that.
Well, first of all, I can't believe you have the nerve and the balls to say Guffman and Cop Out in the same breath like they're similar movies.
Well, they're virtually identical.
One's an abomination before God and man, and the other's, you know, a little...
Why do you think Guffman's an abomination?
But about Dan Gable...
Kevin Smith's not going to be happy you said that.
What does he have to do with Cop Out? Oh, he wrote Cop Out? He directed Cop Out?
Directed it, and this is his network.
What, this is?
Yeah.
So what, he's not proud of Cop Out. Anyway,
The comics... Caan. Anyway.
The
comic crutch. Anyway. So Dan
Gable, when he was in high school, you know.
His sister got raped and murdered,
That's right.
And he said, I'll never lose a match as long as I live.
Wow.
Last match of his college career at Iowa, he lost on a stalling call.
Wow.
That's what's great about wrestling. You can't dance.
Right.
You gotta keep going forward. It's the greatest sport of all time.
Yeah.
And he lost on a stalling call. Tom Cruise, I asked him, instead of Jerry Maguire, what's the one role you wish you could play? And he goes, Dan Gable. Cruise. And him and I talked about it. And he goes, did you know they gave him a standing ovation and chanted his name? I think it was Oklahoma State. They're standing up. Gable. Gable. And he's in the second place podium. And they all chanted because they all knew his story.
Right.
They were happy their guy won, you know. They wouldn't have chanted if he was number one.
Exactly.
All right, don't make a big deal out of
It seems
it.
to be.
Anyway. But Cael Sanderson at Iowa State was undefeated the whole way. And the last match, his senior year at Iowa State, was in Albany. And he said, Dan Gable was doing like Fox Sports Iowa up in Albany for covering the local stuff.
Right.
And he said, keep that fucking jinx away from me. Keep that fucking jinx away from me. He's a jinx. I don't want him anywhere near me. They had to put Cael Sanderson up at a different hotel because Gable knew Cael thought he was a jinx. And Gable went out of his way looking for Cael Sanderson. Colin Mava? Hi, Mava. Right there, love.
Thank you.
Gable knew that it was going to be a problem. Like, he's going to be an undefeated American all-time great.
Right.
And Gable, I think the Olympics were kiboshed when Gable, 76.
I don't know.
Carter. That's not my child. My wife makes those weird noises around the corner. So, the last part I think I got horribly wrong. But here's the thing. Right when Cael Sanderson, he avoided Gable all week. He blows through everybody. Cael Sanderson is the greatest American wrestler to ever live. And believe me, we're all about Gable here at this table.
Yes, Gable. It's a Gable table.
Cael Sanderson's coming through the tunnel in Albany at this arena. And Dan Gable jumps out and goes, hey, Cael, like he jumps out. And he goes, have a good time. Cael Sanderson goes out and fucking pins a guy. You know wrestling enough and fighting enough. National championship wrestling. Right. You don't pin people. Right. You win 2-0, 5-3. Every once in a while it's like 8-2 and you go, well, that guy was a lower seed. He snuck in. Right. He pinned the guy in like a minute. Like he just went out there like a crazy ape. Then he taught himself Greco-Roman wrestling for the Olympics, won the gold medal. Then taught himself had to go back to some kind of weird freestyle tournament in Iran, and he won that. Then he retired, and then he said, all right, I'll do the Olympics again. And that's what he's gearing up for now.
Oh my God.
He's like a crazy person.
He's a psycho.
Yeah.
Speaking of Iran, we should do a movie about the Iron Sheik. Because I'll never forget one of the saddest moments was that they caught the Iron Sheik and I think it was Ivan Koloff, the Russian bear, doing blow on the side of the Jersey Turnpike before a match on their way into the city.
No, you did not see that?
No, I didn't see it, but I'm saying it was in the paper. Back in the 70s when blow was like, hey, a little blow, it's fine.
My friend Marty Greenfield. You know Marty?
No.
He's always around. He books the comics for SUNY Delhi. It's a 2-year school and everybody's
I've heard about that hell gig, yeah.
It's awesome. But when you go up there with Marty, he's like, Mr. Hippie Lettuce. He's like, why don't we go for a walk
Unlike
in the neighborhood?
SUNY Delhi, which apparently is like the day room at Rikers, from what I've heard.
It's SUNY Farmingdale.
No, it's SUNY Delhi.
Delhi is a 2-year agricultural school.
Oh, it is?
And everyone's there for 6 years. Farmingdale.
I heard it's gangster.
Where it's like J.B. Smooth's family reunion. And I'm talking like you again. People are going to enjoy this podcast. That was the one where I couldn't tell who was talking.
My husband's going to be speaking like you. Bye. We love you, Mama.
So Marty said when he was like 12, 13 years old, they all loved Bobo Brazil.
Yes, I remember Bobo Brazil.
And he's playing like the Coliseum, Nassau Coliseum or someplace. I don't know where it was. Someplace in Long Island. And they all go. It's on a Saturday.